Hey, everybody, and welcome to BariAftercare. We are going to have a more lighthearted episode tonight. I've been kind of honing in on some heavy stuff lately, and so we're going to have, I got to take that back. I don't know that it's really lighthearted. Part of it's going to be kind of fun and lighthearted, but part of it's awfully serious
Yes.
but very, very relevant. And I have one of our very own BariAftercare regulars with me tonight because she is an expert both professionally and personally on the topics we're going to cover tonight. So we'll get some good scoop maybe. Welcome, Tabitha.
Yes, I'm super excited for this topic.
I feel like I just saw you. Oh, it's
I
because I
know you did.
it was really fun. Tab and I got to spend a
It
whole day
was.
the other day, mourning
Yes.
over the issues in our life and celebrating over other
Yes.
issues in our lives and recording
Yes.
6 episodes of the family, friends, and relationships
Yep.
episodes for the upcoming year, which of course I was boo-hooing about last night because I got new equipment and I thought I had that sucker all, well, the sound is all jacked up, but my son promises me that we will get it fixed. So I'm just
Okay.
trusting that will happen. I was so bummed, Tabitha. I can't even tell you. But anyway,
Yes. Well, we
anyway,
can always redo it
that's
if we
right.
have
And we
to.
are smiling today, and it's a new day. And
That's
this
right.
is going to be a fun, fun episode. And the episode is about romantic relationships
Yes.
and dating after significant weight loss.
Woo-hoo.
So it's going to be a fun topic. And I'm just going to kind of give you a little bit of intro, you, not you, Tab, but you listeners, about, of course, when you have weight loss surgery, you know that it's life changing. Some people go into it thinking it's not going to be as life changing as it actually turns out to be. But, and it doesn't just have to be weight loss from weight loss surgery, from a surgical procedure. Any significant weight loss, by whatever means, really changes a lot of things in your life. And for a lot of people, that can come as a bit of a surprise. So it's not
Yes.
just your health, which we hope improves, right? But that whole lifestyle overhaul that comes with the dramatic weight loss can have some unexpected changes in your life. And what research
Mhm.
tells us is that there can be dramatic changes in personal relationships as well. True? What are your thoughts, licensed marriage and family therapist?
Ooh, true. Very true. It's definitely, for me personally, been a very eye-opening journey. I've learned a lot about myself in the past 7+ years, some things that I didn't expect to happen. So I'm excited to jump in and talk about some of those things.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, that you, Tabitha, are a 7-year, very successful weight maintaining post op yourself. And you also are a licensed marriage and family therapist and a licensed addictions counselor, in addition to being a bariatric coach. So you had some personal experience and professional experience in therapy prior to going into surgery. So were you surprised by some of the changes that took place in your life after surgery, even though you had more of an awareness than probably a lot of people going into this?
Right. You know what? I would say that there were some things that I was surprised by because I think initially I was just looking at weight loss more for pain reduction because of the accident that I'd been in. So I wasn't
Right.
really thinking about how is this going to impact my relationships, my family, not other than in a positive way, like,
Sure.
I'll have more energy. But yeah, some of the things did end up surprising me for sure.
Okay, so that'll be interesting. Yeah, as we go through this, because I know
Yes.
in the many years that I've worked in this field and with the many, many people that I've worked with before and after they've had this weight loss, a lot of them were like really taken off guard by some of the
Right.
changes, and especially in relationships, not just romantic ones, but friendships and issues,
Sure.
relationships at work and stuff. But here are kind of the highlights of what we're going to do tonight, just to give our listeners kind of an overview. We're going to talk about some research results that are specific to changes in relationships. You hear a lot of things thrown around in the bariatric community about relationships. Some of these did not surprise me, but I think some of the information is a little out of context, which I think will be
Mm.
very interesting for people to hear. And so we're talking about relationship changes, not just for single people, but also for married people. Secondly,
Right.
we're going to talk about what some of the reasons might be for relationship changes after a person loses a lot of weight. And it's funny because Tab and I spent so much time this weekend talking about these things. I feel like we're regurgitating a
Yes.
lot of this, but you guys weren't there. So you didn't hear our 7 hours
Yes.
about relationship
That's
changes
true.
after surgery. Then we're going to talk about this really interesting, I don't know if it was a blog or an article. Have you ever heard of the Hub? I don't even know what the Hub
I
is.
I think I've heard of the hub, but I don't know. Is
Anyway,
it
this
like a lifestyle thing?
I don't know what it is, honestly, but I found this article by a woman who had lost a lot of weight through weight loss
Mhm.
surgery, and she did a really fun article about six, she calls them discoveries about dating after weight loss. So we'll talk about
Okay.
those, and then I'll tell you her discoveries and have you kind of share from your
Right.
perspective as a person who's done
Okay.
some dating after surgery, and then we'll wrap up with some
Yes.
tips about how you might
Perfect.
discuss these topics with a partner that you might have. Ready to roll?
Yes.
All
I'm
right.
ready.
So, some of the research that I found about changes in relationships, and again, this is for adults, both single and married. And one was from an article that was in JAMA, which is Journal of the American Medical Association. And what it showed, it looked at the effects of surgery on your personal life and how significant weight loss might change relationships. And in their research, they found that for the people who were single, having surgery was associated with an increased rate of marriage and new relationships. So, what do you think about that? Makes sense?
You know, there's a lot of things I could say.
Just
I
say
don't know
what
if
you
I want to
want to
go
say.
there. So I think, yes, I would agree that, at least for myself, there was an increased sense of confidence. And so when I did enter the dating scene again after being married for 18 years, um, there were some things that I was kind of surprised by, but I hadn't even considered dating post surgery because I was married when I had surgery. So it was a
And I,
very interesting transition in.
yes, and I've even read that, you know, primary motivations for having surgery are improvements of health or prevention of health problems,
Right,
being able to increase the longevity of your life, possibly, right? Hopefully.
right.
And being able to live a life that you're more comfortable in. For you, you mentioned pain reduction, and a lot of other people are like, I want to get out there and do things that I haven't
Hmm.
been able to do for a long time or have never done.
Right.
But I wonder, and I don't know that a lot of people are going to share this with me going into surgery when I do pre-surgical evaluations, although I have had some. I wonder for some people it's like I want to improve my chances of getting into a committed relationship or getting married. And I
Right.
don't think that's a bad thing.
No, I mean, so this quote from Kevin Spacey in American Beauty comes to mind.
All right.
He just he starts working out and he's like, I just want to look good naked. And I think sometimes it might look like that. And it's not a
I
bad
love
thing.
that.
It's like if you don't feel comfortable with your body and maybe you are single, it might be a real thing that you're thinking about, like getting a partner or a
Absolutely.
spouse, and feeling comfortable naked.
And especially in our society that is very focused on physicality
Right.
and the current social acceptable body is not a
Right.
voluptuous one, right?
True.
Although I will say, I think society has made some strides in that regard in
Right.
terms of there are plus size models for almost everything
Mhm.
now, which I really appreciate. And commercials aren't just like
For
twiggy
sure.
people. right?
Yes.
So do you think that's a motivation? And do you think for men and women it would be a motivation as well for people who are not in a committed relationship going into weight loss?
Yes, and actually, quite a few of the clients that I've coached were single when they had surgery. And
Mm.
one of the motivations for them was they did want to find a partner. They didn't feel comfortable with the body that they were in, um, and just with the way their life was and their health. So it definitely was. In fact, I had a call a week ago with a woman in her 60s. She had
Wow.
had surgery 6 months ago, and she said, there's two things that I'm working on right now. I'm trying to sell my house and I'm trying to get into a relationship.
Oh, I
I
love.
wasn't really prepared for that response, but I thought that was awesome. So
Uh,
she clearly had thought about that prior to surgery, and that was one of her goals. So,
I love that.
absolutely.
That's wonderful. And I'm guessing, a strong guess here, that there are so many emotions that go along with that. It's like anger that why can't somebody love me the way I am? And
Right.
why am I more attractive to people if I lose weight? You
Mhm.
know, not pleased necessarily with your own body before you lose weight, and
Right.
sometimes not really that thrilled with it after you lose weight.
True. Yeah. And, I will say, not to downgrade my ex husband, he was always very comfortable with me at whatever size. So the reason for the ending of my divorce really to me was not surgery related, but he was very accepting. So I just want to put that out there. There were
Yes,
other challenges in the marriage. So,
sure.
um,
And I will say that, and I find this so heartwarming that 99% of people that I have worked with who are in a committed relationship have said the same thing. Their
yes,
partners love them. They
regardless.
say, if this is what you want to do, if you want to improve your
Mhm.
health, if you but I am okay. I love you no
Right.
matter what size you are. And that to me is so beautiful and heartwarming.
For sure.
But then we're going to go to this next issue about why so
Yes.
many divorces after surgery. All right.
Mm,
So, in another study, a different study, and this was compared to the general US population, adults who are not married, lose the weight. Oh, no, this is not that. This is different. Goes along with
okay.
the last one. All right. Scratch, erase. Adults who are not married who lose weight are more than twice as likely to get married within 5 years as people who haven't lost weight.
Okay. I could see that because I do think the immediate aftermath of the surgery, there's really this kind of renewed sense of self and trying new things. Maybe we're taking more risks. I could see that.
I can too. And I think it also kind of harkens to maybe some motivation for wanting to
Right.
lose weight to have a relationship. And also
Yeah.
maybe to, it's so refreshing to have somebody so into me and so interested in me after
Sure.
the weight loss that maybe, and I
Mhm.
don't know the research on this, but maybe they get married quickly because
Mm,
somebody finally loves me. And I can tell you, and my husband would be perfectly
right.
okay with me sharing this. He was
Mhm.
married, his first marriage, my husband was probably 60 to 70 pounds overweight in his teens, which of course it's never
Okay.
a comfortable time to be overweight. But as an adolescent, it was
Sure.
very difficult for him. And when he graduated from high school, and so he did not date at all in high school. So
Mhm.
when he graduated from high school, he lost like 65 pounds, grew 4 inches, and he played in a band and he was the drummer.
Yeah.
So he was like the chick
Mm,
magnet, right? Now he's 6 feet
yes.
tall and he's an average weight for his height. And he married the
Right.
first girl who paid attention to him.
Mm,
And so
yes.
I wonder if that rapid, marrying after weight loss is
Right.
like that for other people. Now,
I
granted,
definitely could
go ahead.
see that. Yeah, because I think, for those of us who maybe shied away from relationships. I mean, granted, I was married during my surgery, but a lot of the people that I've coached, there is this sense of not being comfortable socially. And so then once they start dating, things kind of progress a little bit quickly because there is that excitement like, oh, he thinks I'm pretty. And, I got a new hairdo and I got new clothes. And so things can move really quick. Um, because I think they're still adjusting to a lot of the changes, is my guess.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And in my husband's case, he was a whopping 18 years old. And
Right?
there, and
There's that.
as an obese teen, he thought nobody would ever have any interest in him
Right.
romantically. So,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, now, next I'm going to share two sets of research findings with you. And these, I think, are what people hear and which scare people and shocks people a little bit.
Mm,
There's a caveat. So, okay, so two different sets of research results. Adults who are married and lose weight are more than twice as likely to get divorced. And this was a research done by the University of Pittsburgh School of Public Health. So that's one
okay.
statistic. The other one is a different research agrees that those who are already in a relationship, bariatric surgery was associated with an increased rate of divorce and separation. It doesn't give a number there, but I have heard numbers like, yeah, you're twice as likely to get divorced, 70% divorce rate after surgery, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm.
What have you heard?
I want to say I've heard similar statistics, and I know that we've kind of touched on this subject too, and I'm wondering if there was like a difference in activity level. If one partner was really health focused and maybe the other partner wasn't quite there. Um, but then you also would have to wonder, were there issues before surgery? Because I do think we have to just look at the longevity of the relationship and pieces and parts that maybe don't find their way into the research. So, so
Sure,
I'd just be curious to know the whole story, I
for
guess, with some
sure.
of those couples.
Yeah, and they do go into, and we're going to go into in just a second, some of the,
Perfect.
and you've already touched on those, some of the reasons. And I
Mhm.
have had many patients, sadly, say to me, and it same story with my husband and his first marriage. They didn't think anybody else would want them, and so they got into this marriage with the
Right.
first person who showed interest, and so they
Right.
expressed, like, "I don't know if I would have married this person had I not
Mm,
felt." It really is about how the person feels about themselves, right?
right. That's true. I would agree.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think in my situation, not that the surgery caused it, but I did change the way that I thought about myself over time because we did marry young and I hadn't done any of my own healing before I got married. So there was just a lot of learning along the
yeah.
way.
Were you overweight when you got married? To the
I
first
was.
your first husband
Yep.
or your husband?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was about 50, 60 pounds overweight. I think I'd lost weight for the wedding, but I was still considered obese and kind of
mm,
did the yo yo for
sure.
several years.
And you and I talked this weekend about how, I was also young when I got married. I mean, prefrontal lobe
Right.
development, kind of young, people under
Yes.
25. And back in the day, people did, I think, tend to get married younger. I don't know, maybe that's not accurate. But
Mhm.
I do know that, and you and I just talked about not, well, you said this and we talked about it this weekend, not having done our own work, meaning I wasn't even
Right.
aware of any of the issues I had that were
Yes.
going to not be positive or healthy in a marriage or as a
For sure.
parent. I mean, I didn't even know I had the issues,
Yes. Same.
so I
But
think a
yeah.
lot of people, regardless of weight status and sometimes even age status,
Yes.
we don't know the issues we have. And I heard this really fascinating thing on my trashy little radio show that I listen to and love. So the guy who's the host of the show
Yes.
and his now ex-wife are very, very good friends now. But
Mm,
it took some time. They were married for 20 years or something, or
nice.
like got divorced and went through that
Hmm.
we're not friends stage. And now it's been like 10 years and they've both done a
Yep.
ton of therapy. And so he had a
Nice.
segment on his show where he set her up with it was kind of like the match game or the dating game. And so now she's dating this
Oh,
guy.
wow.
Yeah. Now she's dating this guy and they are
Yeah.
really serious. And so all the
Wow.
listeners are like, what's the update? What's the update? So he had her on the other day with the new
Yes.
boyfriend and they were talking about,
Wow.
yeah, they were talking about, how cool it all is. And his ex-wife likes his
Yes.
current partner and all the good things. But she said something that I thought was
Hmm.
fascinating. So after they split up, and probably some before that, they had done a lot. She has done, and he has too, a tremendous amount of individual therapy. And she said, so now she
Yes.
goes into this new relationship and things are really good. And she said something that I loved though. She said, I thought I had uncovered every rock there was to uncover
Well,
in my personal journey of therapy. She
right.
said, but until you're in a relationship, it's really
Hmm.
hard to work through some of those things, you know?
Yes.
And so I think even if you or I or anybody had the foresight to do some therapy or some discovery of
Right.
self, it kind of takes on a different, mutation in a
True.
relationship.
That is amazing. I love that they're still good friends.
No,
I'm
they are
hoping
not.
we'll get to that stage.
I've seen it happen time and time again, and I love it. I'm talking
Right.
divorced
That's
couples
awesome.
who are remarried and go on vacation with their children and stuff together. And I think it's
That's
such
cool.
a beautiful thing. I really do. It takes a
Yes,
lot of adulting,
for sure.
right? So anyway, I think
Yep.
that I think it is definitely possible, and I think we all have work to
Hmm.
do. So anyway, back to these
Yes.
statistics. So a lot of divorce, a lot of
Okay.
quick marriage. But let's talk about this divorce thing because I read this and I thought, okay, because people, they're like, oh my God, I'm
Hmm.
terrified about having surgery because of this
Right.
divorce rate that I keep hearing about. So there's been some
Right.
studies, and one of the research studies was talking about their results, which were consistent with other studies like in Scandinavia. And so the majority, listen to this, listeners, because it's comforting. The vast majority of participants maintained their relationship status for the 5 years that they were followed after surgery. So these people were followed for 5 years, and the vast majority maintained their relationships, with 81% of married participants staying married for 5 years, and 70% of always single participants saying staying single. And and I thought that was good because it gives you time to kind of get to
Hmm.
know yourself as this new person.
Right. That's
Here
pretty
was
cool.
here was another thing that I want your opinion on this as a marriage and family therapist. But 18% of unmarried participants got married compared to 7% of the general population, which I thought was interesting. So much,
Yeah.
and that goes with that, so many people getting married within those 5 years. And
Right.
8% of married people that they were following, 8% got divorced compared to 4% of the general population.
Hmm.
And an additional
Okay.
5% of married people who didn't get divorced got separated.
Okay. And do they list in there any of the underlying issues for any of those sets?
Yeah, we'll go into that in just a minute. But I
Okay.
just thought that was interesting. So I wanted
Yeah.
to include that because a lot of people do stay in relationships for
Yes.
this study only followed people for 5 years. So who knows how long they
Right.
stayed married or got divorced or whatever. But I think that's important. And I will liken this to when I went through
Mhm.
treatment. They tell people don't make any major changes within the first year. I think that's a short amount
Right.
of time. I think it should
For
be
sure.
3, 4, 5 years. So speak to that in terms of your professional perspective and
Right.
your personal.
Yeah, I mean, that first year, there's just so much change, just with the rapid weight loss and just the way we show up in the world. So I know for me, it took some time to really catch up to what was happening. Because, I mean, externally, you could see all the changes, but internally, there was just so much movement. But I didn't even recognize some of it. And I really ended up back in therapy, and there was a lot. There was a lot. So I do think 3 to 5 years is a good time to really get to know ourselves post op.
Not only a physiological stabilization period, if you will, but also an emotional
Right.
stabilization period.
Yes, for sure. I mean, I didn't recognize that I'd never been dealing with my emotions because food was my source. So just getting to know myself again and learn how to cope with basic feelings.
Yeah.
That took a minute.
It takes a minute. It takes a minute because,
Yeah.
yeah, like that first year, it's like a full-time job just getting used to the
Oh my
schedule,
gosh.
of eating
Yes.
and
And all
vitamins and
the
water and
eating.
exercise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think this is true, and I have no well, I do have some research to back it, but I wanna know because 'cause we've both had a lot of experience working in this field,
Right.
and you've got that personal experience to go with it, and there's an increase in typically how a person feels about themselves as they lose the weight, right?
Yes.
You
For
lose
sure.
the weight, you start to feel better, and you go on
Hmm.
this high almost.
Yes.
And you talked this weekend and joked about the selfies, right? Like, "Oh my gosh, I
Oh, yeah.
finally can stand to see myself in a picture, so let's take the pictures," and it's
Yes.
all good and exciting. But the research does bear
Right.
out, and where I read this was in the intuitive eating book that I recently read, that
Hmm.
as a person levels out with their weight gain, and if they start to experience what is a natural, normal increase in weight after the lowest
Hmm.
point,
Right.
then a lot of that self-doubt that they had before surgery comes creeping back, along with the negative
For
self-talk,
sure.
along with the unhealthy behaviors, along with the return to.
Yep.
So my speculation is that there's almost like a temporary high.
Yes.
Can you
And
speak to that?
potentially the, well, so I know I kind of experienced it a few times because in the first year, I definitely surpassed the goal weight. And of course, I'm super excited about this. But then when I started weight training and really like seeing definition in my body and muscles, that was a whole different high for me. So, I think depending on what activities we're involved in, we might experience things again, right? Like just getting to see, like, oh, wow, my body can do this, or, getting on stage and seeing myself in the lights and all of that. Like, yeah, there definitely was a period of an increased sense of self, but it can very quickly drop, and so we have to be mindful of how do we maintain a realistic,
Yes.
healthy sense of self that's not on either end of the spectrum. It's you know
And I think when you're going through that, it's almost impossible to
right.
imagine that I'm gonna come out of this, this feeling good about myself, this super high, this super, oh my god, this is so great." And it is. Seriously, it's not to take away from that because there should be a high. Uh-oh, are
Oh,
you
did you
there?
lose me?
I lost you. Yeah, that's
i'm
right. I got
I'm
it.
still here.
Yeah, no, it's just your picture
Okay.
perfect. Okay, so I think everybody should stay
Okay.
super excited and should be feeling good about themselves, but I think there's
Right.
some caution to take
For sure.
in trying to tell people ahead of time, but I don't know that it'll stick. I don't think.
Right.
But here's how I kind of explain it to people. If you didn't like your mother-in-law before you got married, chances are you're not going to be your biggest fan after you get married, right? So if you have pretty low
True.
self-esteem before you get married,
Hmm.
there's a boost, but I think it's
Right.
temporary until things kind of settle out. And I think people go a
Hmm.
little buck wild
Right.
during that time. What have you seen?
I would agree. Yeah. I mean, I just cracked up that you said buck wild. um, because I don't think the frontal lobe is engaged at that time. There's so much to get caught up in. There's the social stuff. There's, even just going to these bariatric events, although they're amazing, but you
Right?
do kind of get this high. And
Yeah.
is it realistic to stay there? It's it's usually not.
It's usually not. Exactly. And yeah,
Right.
I totally get it, and I can see how easy, it's like, "Oh my gosh, for the first time, people I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna dance and go out and go dance, but
Yes.
holy moly, don't go sleeping with
Right.
everybody, especially if you're married."
Right.
Right? But
Right.
I can
Yes.
understand the allure. It's like, people are attracted to me. People want me. People, think I'm
Yes.
cute. People think I'm pretty. People think I'm handsome. People think people want to be with me. It's like, okay,
Right.
okay, okay, because it feels good,
Yes.
right? So I think, it's like, I think there's some little
Yeah.
off the rails sometimes. And I wish I could prevent that for people, but I don't know how.
Right. Yeah. Yes. No, I definitely have seen it with a lot of the folks that I've coached, and, being divorced and then single in my 40s, I didn't even know what to do with dating. So I think there's just these levels of unknown. So you might take more risks than you're used to taking, and you might feel good because you just feel all cute, but
Yeah.
we still need to be cautious.
Yes.
So
Yes.
take it from me. Take your time.
Yeah. Well, take it from everybody who's done it, right? I have
Yes.
a very good friend, and
Yes.
she also was in her 40s when she had probably mid
Mhm.
to late 40s. And she did a lot of the making up for lost time sort of thing
Yep.
and was being more sexual. And we were talking one day.
Right.
I said, well, something about protection. And she's like, I didn't even think of it. It's like, girlfriend, you know what? Your frontal lobe is
Nope.
supposed to be developed,
Shoot.
So
Yes.
people do lose their minds a little bit.
That's
So
funny.
if we can prevent,
Yes.
just have fun,
Right.
celebrate your awesomeness in safe and protected ways.
Safely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And don't go out and, fall into the alcoholism trap. And
Right.
it can be dangerous those first couple of years. And that's why I was very comforted, I think, by the statistics
Mm.
that said people were still together for 5 years and the single were still single, because it
Right.
does give you time to kind of get to
Yep.
re-know yourself. And
Yes. Agreed.
okay, so now let's get into some of the reasons, some of the changes,
Hmm.
and what goes behind those. So I'll read you what some of the people in the study said, and then you can talk about what you think about that. All right, so those who lost the most weight were most
Perfect.
likely to have a change in their love lives, according to the study. And they highlighted the fact that changes in weight can affect more than just physical size. We know this, we've been talking about this, because self confidence, lifestyle
Mm.
behaviors,
Right.
activity levels change with pronounced weight loss and improved health. And they said, however,
Right.
a different report said so they're saying the amount of weight loss. Um, well, one says The amount of weight lost was not associated with whether someone got married, but improved health was. Another one said weight loss did
Mm.
matter when it came to separation and divorce. So the people who lost more weight were more likely to get separated or divorced, as were those who reported an increase in sexual desire post surgery. So that may be one of the reasons, an
Right.
increase in sexual desire, which also could be, you know what? I didn't want to be touched before, and now I do.
True. That's super true. And depending on was there underlying trauma before, that could have led to maybe an absence of that sexuality in the relationship and then kind of rediscovering their bodies. So, yeah, I think a lot of those don't surprise me so much. Um, and I want to say, like, the coaching clients that I've had, it's kind of been a mixed bag. I've worked with quite a few married folks, but a lot of times both parties are working on their health. Even if the other party didn't get surgery, they seem very active. So those are the couples that seem to be doing well. But I've also worked with a lot of single folks that are back on the dating scene. So, but again, they're all within that first 5 years. So it'll be interesting if I can catch up with these folks and see.
Absolutely. And I was thinking, and tell me what you think of this. So let's say you're in a relationship where your weight prohibited you psychologically from wanting to be touched. And so you're married or you're in a
Right.
committed relationship, but there's not a lot of sexual activity. And the other person's, for whatever reason, is
Sure.
okay with that status quo, right?
Mhm.
Now, one
Right.
person loses weight and you know, the, they talk about the increased level of hormones
Right.
in your body as you lose weight, and how
Yes.
oftentimes there is a resurgence of sexual energy. And now you're in a relationship where for a long time it was like, we're fine with
Yeah.
rare sexual activity. And now the person losing weight wants it all the time. That could cause some problems. Yeah.
Right. For sure. Yeah. And I think, going back to some of the conversations we've had, could it be time for couples counseling to figure out how do we come together with these new changes and these new desires? Um, so I'd also be curious to know with some of these couples, did they go to counseling?
And is that something you would recommend?
Yes. Heck yes. Like I'm
Yeah.
dating and we are even going to do a little therapy with each other because we're still working through some of our own junk.
I
And I'm not
love.
even getting married. I'm just excited to work in his journey and vice versa. Just so they understand.
See, that's what a mature adult does, right? I mean, it's
Right.
like, let's explore these things, and
Mhm.
not just the sexual things, but all of the things,
Right.
because
Yes.
most of us are coming into relationships with some kind of baggage, whether it's related to other
For sure.
relationships or just ourselves or
Yep.
whatever. And a
Agreed.
a psychologist at St. Vincent Charity Medical Center Bariatric Program said people's relationships change, and here's a controversial thing, I think, because the person has fundamentally changed. Some people who have surgery say, I'm still the same person. Other people say,
Mm-hmm.
that's crap, I have changed. What are your thoughts?
Ooh, that's a tricky one because just for me personally, I feel like I'm the same me, but my expectations have changed.
And what,
And I think the way that uh, I used to not believe that I deserved certain things.
I love that
Um,
vulnerability.
and that was like professionally, personally. No, I can't get that. Or I'm not good enough for that. Um, but that piece has shifted in me, especially with a lot of the therapy work I've been doing. Um, but I feel like the core me is still the same. I just maybe am more vocal about the
Mm.
things that I need. I know how to ask for what I need now. I didn't know before.
You know what you're describing? I believe to be very true in what I've seen in the 20 years I've worked in this field, that people are fundamentally, well, she says people fundamentally change, but what I hear you saying is at the core, I'm still the same person. My values are the
Right.
same, but my self-esteem, my sense of shame has decreased. My sense of
Right.
worth has increased. My skills from therapy and,
Right.
learning to stand up for myself and to set boundaries and all of those
Yeah.
things have improved, which translates oftentimes into venturing out, taking risks, seeking more
Yes.
for yourself.
For sure.
And I
Yeah, and
think
I would say that that has been the majority of the experience of the folks that I've worked with is they're still the same them. They're just like, "Oh, I can do this. I can say that." Right?
exactly.
And so it's learning to put a voice behind it. So getting to watch people do that has been so amazing.
And
Like,
yeah, I agree.
where
And
yeah,
you,
go ahead.
you can imagine, and I'm sure you've experienced this personally and working with your coaching clients, that that's going to cause some upheaval in a relationship where
This
maybe,
is true.
all right, you talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, because and I don't necessarily think it's jealousy perhaps, but I think it's people want to they don't really know what to do with us after surgery. I think sometimes there's family and friends and significant others. It's confusing because they didn't go through this procedure. So
Right.
there's pieces that just don't make sense. And I don't think we necessarily have the language to share early on what's really going on. So there could just be just a lot of unknowns and missed communication. Um, I want to say that everybody has good intentions typically, but I just think it is such a drastic change that sometimes can be difficult for others to understand.
And it's positive, healthy behaviors, oftentimes standing up for yourself, asking
Right.
for what you want. Those are
Yes.
often very healthy things that we love to see. But
Yes.
to the people who haven't known you as that person, it's like, what is happening? Who
Yes.
are you?
Yes.
And I think there's misinterpretation. Like you said, it's like, oh, you're so
For
full of
sure.
yourself now. No,
Hmm.
I'm not full of myself. I'm
Right.
understanding that I have value.
Yes. And so, you know, kind of like we've talked about before, just looking at it as a system, the person having surgery is changing the system by the change in their behavior. So not everybody's going to be excited about the change. So I
Hmm.
think again, where therapy can be really helpful, support groups, helping family members understand, you know, what is happening. Because to them it could be, oh, I think you're going to leave me, or I don't I don't know who you are because I've never seen you set boundaries before. This is
Exactly.
confusing.
And I liked things the way they were. So I don't
Yes,
think I like you standing up for yourself.
that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is, like you said, and I so value what you do as a licensed marriage and family therapist and as a bariatric coach, because if people would just put it out there and then the other party, it's like learn to understand each other and listen to where each
Yeah.
other's coming from, and let's
Right.
expose your fears and your vulnerabilities,
Hmm.
and let's expose your, like, I don't think I like what's happening here,
Yeah.
right? And
True.
figure out a way to bring things together, as opposed to, I think there are a lot of uncouplings that are
Right.
unnecessary. I think
True.
there are a lot that are necessary, but I think if people would put a
Yeah.
little bit of effort into it, or at least put
True.
the effort into seeing how to separate in a healthy way.
Hmm. Yes. Ooh, almost dropped something. Sorry.
And you know what? You mentioned this earlier, and this Dr.
Yes.
Maximin says the dysfunction in the relationship may have already been there. People
Yeah.
were already in unhealthy relationships because a lot of people would rather stay in an unhealthy familiar relationship than
Right.
go it alone or other reasons.
Yeah. And, I think in my case, it was a lot of people pleasing. I think there were a lot of indicators that things weren't the greatest, but, I learned to just sort of go along to get along. And then post op, that began to change to some degree. And again, these issues were present prior to. But I do think it's worth everybody who is married post op to address whatever comes up if there is a chance to do marriage counseling. I think that's warranted, you know?
I do too. I think it's warranted and I think it's wise.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because this is the same psychologist, but she says, when people start to feel better physically and you got rid of that pain,
Mhm.
you're more
Yeah.
active. You start to see things more positively, and you start
Yes.
to try to make improvements in other areas of your life, which I
Right.
love, makes me so filled with joy
Yes.
and
Right.
um, gives them confidence to address a lot of other things. Um,
Yes.
yeah. So you mentioned people pleasing. And in the research, it
Mhm.
brings up there's a lot of dependency on partners for daily
Yes.
routine things. So when you were in pain, you mentioned this when we were together, when you were in pain and your kids were little, you
Right.
were unable physically to do some of the things and you
Mhm.
needed a partner.
True. Yeah. And I mean, I'll be honest, even now, I've never lived by myself before. This is the first time.
Mm,
So, my ex husband took care of all the basic stuff. Like he was the handyman. Like I was running the household as far as like the kids' schedules and dealing with the teachers and the coaches and all that stuff. But like basic, put a TV up, put a picture up, handle the yard work. He cooked. There was a whole lot of stuff I had to learn how to do in my mid
yes.
40s.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, like I didn't think about all these things right as I got divorced, but there's some days where I'm like, man, sure would have been nice to have a husband right now. Put this
Yeah.
stuff on the wall. But at the same time, I'm grateful that I'm no longer people pleasing. I'm
Yes.
choosing to live the life that I'm striving for. So,
And because we're both therapists, I just want to point out that people pleasing thing can oftentimes come from I do this because I have there's a secondary gain. I feel
right.
accepted or wanted or,
Yes.
approved of or involved in. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, there can be some dependency and then you no longer need that
Yes.
dependency. All
Right.
right.
Very true.
All right, let's transfer.
Yes.
Let's switch gears. But before we do, I think we are both obviously encouragers of therapy, individual,
Yes.
couples,
Yep.
whatever.
Group, all
At
of the
least
above.
give it a go to see
Yeah.
if you can work through things or if you
Mhm.
can at least leave the relationship in a better state of mind so that you're both better prepared
Right.
for new ones if you choose that going
True.
forward. Okay, so this
Yes.
article was really cute, and I'm gonna
Okay.
contact this woman, Rachel Vega. I don't know who you are, I hope you
All
listen,
right.
but I wanna give you credit for this. It was a delightful article on Hub
Awesome.
Pages. Again, I don't know what it is. But she talks
That's
about
awesome.
6 discoveries about dating after weight loss. So I'm gonna share with
Mm.
you her discoveries and a little bit of commentary, and then you let me know personally and professionally, all right? All right.
Yes. Okay.
So, dating, we're talking about dating here. People will
Yes.
react differently to you from the get go. So, if someone um, you meets the you that has lost weight, never knew the other
Mhm.
overweight you, they may not, they don't get it. They don't buy it. They have trouble accepting
Yeah.
that was you. So, they
Mm.
will likely have difficulty understanding some of your personal concerns or anxieties.
Right.
What do you think about that?
So, funnily enough, the person I'm dating, his last girlfriend had weight loss surgery. So when I
He
share,
has a type.
yeah, that It's kind of funny. So I was kind of shocked at first because I'm like, oh man, do I tell him? Do I not? Because he's going to know, like, I'm not eating that much. Because these are things I didn't think about before I was married. So I didn't,
Mhm.
and it was very interesting because he's like, oh, I know all about that. You had to do this and this and this. Like, he starts telling me all the bariatric lifestyle stuff. And I was cracking up because
That's
he
funny.
gets it.
Yeah,
So
he
he's
does.
like, I already know you need protein and I got this for
Oh
you. And,
my
like,
gosh.
I was like, all right, that's
Well,
cool.
that was
So
convenient for you.
I know. I was like, okay. Um, yeah, it was interesting.
And
So,
she says, but if he had not, she said, they think you've always been this way, and so she
right.
said this can make for some, she says, complicated explanations, and I can
This is
imagine
true.
that to be true.
Yes. Well, and there's even this weird, for me, like, what if I gain the weight? What happens? Would he get upset? Like, but he's, again, very similar to my ex. Like, I love you at whatever size you are, whatever. So that's comforting. But again, I've never expected to not be married post op. So
Right.
just kind of learning how to be in this state, it's a little interesting.
She
It's a
also
little
talks
interesting.
about, in that same vein, she's like, you know, they might want to see your before picture, and you might be like, oh God,
Hmm.
no. So you have to decide,
Yeah.
where you stand on that.
So, and the person I'm seeing is a photographer on the side.
Ah!
So it's I've shown him all the befores, and he just loves to find places for me to look beautiful. So he's always like, oh, I think this would be a really great place to take a picture of you.
That's
And so that's been kind of nice to be able to still have my love of selfies, but he feels good about, hey, look at the light
yes.
here. And
Oh,
it's
that's
been really
awesome.
cool.
Oh, that's really fun.
So
Okay,
yeah,
so yeah.
yeah,
All right. Then her second, what did she call these things? Discovery. Her
discoveries.
second discovery was that
Hmm.
dates would be different. No kidding. She's like,
Yeah,
typically a date is, do you want to go out for dinner, or do you want to go get
yeah,
drinks, or do you want to, you can't even eat and drink at the same time, and you're not supposed to have alcohol
right,
for a year. And, you know,
yeah,
what do you do about that?
yeah. So a lot of the folks that I've coached, they'll do like coffee dates or midday kind of things where they can just have little snacks. Um, my person and I, we do a lot of appetizers together, or like a salad and something small. So we're not eating these big giant meals, and you work it out. Depending on if you're comfortable sharing with the person that you've had surgery, you can find ways to
Exactly.
make it work.
But interesting, right? Because
So
your guy knows you now. But, first dates,
yes,
it's like, oh my gosh. She said,
yeah,
so you might find
yeah,
yourself on more physical dates, like hiking or dancing, or, you
sure,
know, she said,
yes,
bring a protein
movement,
bar.
yes,
I
so
want
true.
I want to tell everybody about a woman that I worked with for quite a while, and she had surgery, and she had been married for probably close to 40 years, got
Wow,
divorced, never wanted to be out of that marriage for many years before she was.
right,
Um, and I mean, she's in her 50s, and she decided, and I loved this. And I don't know if I would encourage everybody to do this, but
yeah,
she made up her mind she was going on 50 first dates,
wow,
because she said, I need to get to know myself,
true.
and what I need to know what I'm like around men, and different men. And
Hmm.
I need to learn about different kinds of men. I have been married since I was a teenager. I've been married for
Yeah,
40 years. I don't even know what I like. I don't even know what I'm
true.
interested in. And this
Hmm.
one amazed me. I mean, she went out
That's
on some
awesome.
second or third of your dates, but that woman went on 57 first dates before she found the
Wow,
man she was going to marry.
that's amazing.
Isn't that
I want to
cool?
say I went on like 6 dates,
But
and then I met this one.
that's
But we
okay.
did. I did go to the gym and do different
Sure,
things with folks. So, like, I tried to mix it up, but I hadn't dated since I was 21. I don't
exactly.
even know how to date, y'all.
I know, yeah. So
That
I
was
loved
stressful.
that. I loved that.
Yeah,
She
that's
wasn't like,
huge.
yeah, she was like, I'm in no hurry. Yes, I want to be married someday, sometime, but
Mhm.
I need to learn me. And I was like, that's
Yep,
so impressive.
that's
Okay.
beautiful.
All right. The third discovery, people are more attentive. Now, I'm going to read what she wrote, and I'm going to warn the
Okay,
listeners that this one might cause you to have feel some kind of way, as they say.
gotcha.
All right. So I'm just going to read it verbatim because I
Okay.
don't want these to be my words. Everyone likes to look at people they find attractive. And as you approach more conventional beauty standards, you will discover that life becomes a little easier. And that's kind of sad to me. Conventional beauty
Hmm,
standards, smaller,
right.
whatever. Um, and she writes in parentheses, I'm sorry to point this out, but it is true. Now, those are not my words. Don't get mad at me.
Hmm.
She says, personally, and I agree with her in this, I believe beauty comes in
Hmm.
all shapes and sizes. All right. She said, that said, doors will be held for you all the time, whereas perhaps they were held less. Your dates will consistently fall all over themselves trying to impress you instead of you always working to impress them. And people will overestimate your positive qualities, even trusting you more than an average looking person. Also, it can be tempting to date some people based purely on their looks. But remember, if your dates are into you simply because the way you look instead of the person you are, I beseech you, find someone else and rethink your
Hmm.
plan as well. So I liked all of that, but what do you think?
Right. So, I don't think I met those people. And I feel like the folks that I coach haven't met those people either. However, I will say in regular life, many of us do talk about that there is more attention. There is more holding the doors, or can I help you, miss, or can I help you, ma'am? Like, I do feel that many of us feel a little bit more seen
Yeah,
in just everyday life. But in terms of the dating scene, I feel like most of what people have shared has been just like a lot of games and is this person even real? Is this a bot? You know what I mean? Like just weird stuff.
wow, yeah,
And they were recognizing red flags more quickly. So I don't know if people were really experiencing this falling all over you type of deal.
you're
I
right.
don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had a great experience in my current situation, but I think we both were coming into the situation before we became in a relationship with our own baggage and wondering, you know what I mean? So I don't think anybody was really super trying to impress. I think we were trying to figure each other out, like, what's your
Hmm.
story? But then getting to know each other, you know? So I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know if I explained that.
Well, I think you explained it great. And I think what was saying is that research does bear out a lot of what she's saying. People,
Right.
treat people who are of a more standard weight according to the height and weight charts with more respect and
Right.
like they're more intelligent. It's wrong,
Yeah.
but I
Right.
think, all right. The fourth
Yeah.
discovery, the messages you receive will be different. Anyone subjecting themselves to online dating, she says, has had their share of distasteful or otherwise eye
Yeah.
rolling inducing messages. You know the type, the
Oh
blatantly
gosh.
suggestive ones or the overly poetic
Hmm.
ones. I love
Yes.
her way she writes, comparing you to an angel or even worse, an actor in a not safe for work type of movie.
Woo!
And she says, if you dated when you were heavier, you may have received some of these annoyances, but do know that they will increase almost exponentially, even if you specify no hookups. in your profile. She says, "Don't say I didn't warn you."
Yeah. I mean, I did get a few very bold kind of statements from folks, and I was like, we haven't even met yet. Like, how do you ask that? You know
Do
what I
I
mean?
know you?
So yeah, that was interesting. And I do think a lot of the clients I've worked with have shared some of those types of situations as well.
Mhm,
But I can say that almost all of us were able to communicate back that we didn't really enjoy those types of messages.
mhm.
So I thought that's
Good.
kind of a non-scale victory for
Absolutely.
communication and setting boundaries. But yeah,
Mhm.
there's a lot of junk online. So
Yeah, I think that is regardless of size, weight, whatever, right?
I would agree.
I have an absolutely stunningly beautiful client, and she's in her 70s, but I swear to God, she looks like she's in her early 50s.
Wow.
Beautiful. So she wanted,
Mm,
she wanted to play with the dating thing, and she said, "I'm not interested in a sexual relationship." And
mhm.
when she put that on her profile, she
Yeah.
got no interest.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of a bummer for her. Okay, number 5,
Jeez.
because 'cause we're kinda running out of time
Okay.
here, but your
Right.
choice of companions will be different. She says, "You be picky. You now be picky." She said, "Think of it
Right.
as an interview process. Find somebody
Yes.
you're actually interested in instead of because some people have said, 'I settled. I settled.'"
Right. Yeah, I would definitely say my my boyfriend is very different than my ex-husband. Even outer, inner, like he's very vocal about standing in my corner, which is not something I've received before. So, and he's Caucasian, and my ex-husband was black. So it's I think my tastes maybe changed a little bit, and I went older because I really was looking for a little bit more maturity.
Mhm.
Um, and again, some of the clients that I've worked with, I think their standards had changed in terms of what they were willing to accept. I had one client who was maybe, well, she was in a relationship with someone who was married, and she's no longer allowing herself to do that post op. She's like, nope,
Uh,
that's something I'm not doing anymore. So I think our values do hopefully increase
mhm.
with what we're looking at.
That just sparked another conversation in my head because I've had more than a handful of women say that
Right.
they fear losing weight because when they're at a smaller size, they're extremely promiscuous and
Right.
their weight prevents them from engaging in sexually acting out, which is a
Sure.
whole different topic. But,
Yeah.
that is something,
To consider. Well, and definitely something to work through in therapy. Yeah,
you take the
for
words
sure.
right out of my brain, my friend.
Because, whew, not a coach for that one. Therapy.
Amen.
Just
Yes,
saying. Just saying.
for sure. All right, and
Yeah.
this sixth discovery, but related to dating, is you're going to feel different about yourself. And she notes, and I thought
Yeah.
this was interesting, and this is kind of what we were alluding to about that self-esteem thing. She said you'll feel
Yes.
more confident until you begin to doubt yourself somewhat. And
Hmm.
I thought that was really smart. She's like, every coin
Right.
has two sides, you know?
True.
So and your body's going to change, and sometimes you're going to love how you look, and sometimes you're not, and you know?
Right.
And I love her parting line. Gotta contact this woman and tell her I love this. She said,
Yeah.
"Remember, she said underwent surgery, but if you didn't have surgery and losing weight, you
Mm.
underwent surgery for your health, not your
Right.
looks." And that is the bottom.
Ooh, that's good. That's really good. Wow. Yeah, I definitely, there's just so much learning on this post op journey. So
There
much
is.
learning.
And in Berry Aftercare, we focus a
Yes.
lot on it's yes, it's about your weight and your health, but it's also beyond bariatrics. And that this article
Yes.
talked about so much of that self-esteem and
Hmm.
relationships and, confidence
Right.
and learning the skills to ask for what you want and stand up for yourself.
Yes.
So, all critically important things. So,
For
remember,
sure.
when you have surgery, you say you want to improve your health or prevent health problems, do things you want to do, improve your lifestyle. It's
Yeah.
great to look and feel better for sure. But remember, you are a whole person.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, we can still want to look good naked, but do the work.
Darn right.
Do the do the work.
Heck, I want to look good naked. I think that ship has sailed.
Oh, stop it.
You know
You're
what?
beautiful.
But my husband loves me
That's right. That's all that
pre and
matters.
post baby and wrinkles and stretch marks and blah.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
So, takeaways, some tips, conversations with your
Ooh.
partners, right?
Yes. Absolutely. I think just being real about where you're at with each other, where you're at with your journey. Are they joining you on the journey? Are they not? Do you have expectations? Talk about them. Do you have fears? Talk
And
about them.
if you're wise enough to be seeking out information before you have surgery and you're listening to this
Yes,
podcast, take this to your partner and talk
for
about
sure.
these things, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. And Dr. Maximin, and I will put links to all of these articles that I got
Awesome.
information from in the show notes, but she says, don't let a fear of change hold you back, right?
Hmm.
Issues in relationships can be tackled one at a
Right.
time.
That's true.
So get out there and
Yeah.
live life. Do your thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
And she
Ooh, that
also
was
said,
good.
yeah, and I also love this too. She says, patients often put a lot of pressure on themselves that all of their issues will be fixed by surgery. Yeah, you're going to feel better, she says, but fixing a bad job
Hmm.
situation or home stress isn't a
Yeah.
guarantee. That's why you need to see Tabitha or myself or Dr.
Right.
Maxman or,
Hmm.
you know, find some professionals
Yes.
as well as your peers, and get
Right.
the support and education that you need to make healthy
Absolutely.
choices for you and for your relationships.
Love it.
What are your parting words of wisdom, my good friend?
Oh, I think I'm really impressed by the 57 first dates. I
I
really like that.
know.
That that is cool. So I think even just celebrating and getting to know ourselves and being okay with the process. Nothing has to be fixed overnight. This is still a learning experience all the way through.
I love that you just said that. Yeah, it's a process. Don't jump into or out of
Right.
anything. Get to know your new self.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
All right. I
Yeah,
really appreciate A, you're being on this podcast. B, you're being part of BariAftercare. And also your vulnerability to share your personal journey. You're a professional and you're a patient, and you are so
yeah,
willing to share the full experience, and that is so so appreciated.
for sure.
And of course, I'll
Yeah,
put all of your
absolutely.
information,
Yeah,
and in just a second I'll have you share some of that information. But if you're
sure.
listening to this, know that we have a complete Berry Aftercare program, and it is chock full of
Yes,
information. And Tabitha and I do a monthly marriage or family, friends, and relationships episode. So you want to be part of that. And you can get that
yes,
information at Bari Aftercare, BARI, aftercare.com. So where can people find you, my
yes.
friend?
So on Instagram, I'm at the real Barry Boss, and on my website, barryboss.com.
I love it. Yes, you are.
Yes.
You are the best. You really are.
Thank you. You are too.
You're an amazing human as a
Thank you.
person, and professionally, absolutely top of the line.
I
All right,
appreciate
you
you.
guys, thanks. I can't wait to hear
Thank you.
feedback,
Yes,
comments about this episode. Please share it with others. And Tabitha,
absolutely.
love you much. And I'll
Love
talk to you
you.
soon. All right.
Sounds good.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.